May. The grass was dark with dew. Sun not quite up over the buildings, though the sky was light already. The California poppies and oxalis still furled tightly, waiting for the sun to hit. Talia stretched her back, swinging her arms gently, breathed in. Morning, May 1st. She looked around, wondering if the neighbors were watching. The drug addicts across the street were still asleep after a meth-fueled Walpurgisnacht. Talia had heard them as she closed last night's ceremony. She was alone this year for the rites. No lover to ride her on the winds of change. No lover to gallop wildly with and bring sweetly, gently, down to earth. This year, her visions were her own. She aimed to keep them. She bent to touch her hands to the damp grass, a small city patch around a gingko tree, bordered by concrete and asphalt. She patted her face with the dew. The rattling of a recycling cart came from down the road, but there was something. She shook the dreadlocks away from her eyes. A crow, hopping down a branch over her head, staring at her with one black eye, then another. Hello, cousin. She straightened up, boots firm beneath her. What's the word? Crack. Her third eye tingled where the dew dried. She saw. Visions of women in villages weaving cloth. Visions of men in cities walking into buildings made of glass. Visions of whales in deep water. Visions of a lone girl walking a long road. Visions of beings of light. Visions of worms underground, visions of cells dividing, visions of plants unfurling, visions of stars, visions of babies being born, visions of an old man falling down, mathematical symbols, planets turning, notes played in thickening air, fire burning, blood pounding, rainbow colors, pure light, a flash, gray, dark. She felt her knees hit the concrete, barely noticed pain, heard wings flying past her head. Damn her low blood pressure. She hadn't eaten anything before her dew-gathering expedition. Who knew she'd need food this early? Who knew that after last night there were more visions to be had? The flying ointment shouldn't last this long. Usually she slept it off pretty quickly. Talia kept her head down until she felt things clearing. Looked up. A dark-skinned woman with a fine-boned face was staring down at her. She'd never seen skin so dark, not in person. The woman wore a long white dress. Her head was wrapped in a white cloth, towering, clearly covering a long coil of braids. She held a wooden staff, top festooned with silver charms, colored beads, and feathers. Black feathers, blacker than the woman's skin, black as crow. Hello, cousin. The woman's voice was low. Will you take a walk with me? Talia stood, ankles and knees protesting. The woman smelled like the whole city all at once, like oil slicks in the rain, like bread baking at the Subway sandwich shop, like trees and smog, like marijuana smoke, like anise and incense, like the fog in the morning, like the smell of the ocean washing the city clean as the evening wind blew through. Talia bowed her head slightly. I'd be honored, ma'am, but I have to eat and get to work soon. The woman looked around. Things are quiet for the moment. I will set you back in no time at all. Things were quiet. The rattling cart was gone. She couldn't hear the ubiquitous morning buses one block over. No cars. She looked around. People should have been heading into work by now. Nothing. Then she noticed. The sun hadn't crusted yet. It should have been fully up by now, peeking around the buildings, waking up the flowers. Talia looked at the woman. Black eyes stared. Kind. Firm. Old. really, really old. Okay. The woman's staff talked on the sidewalk, marking out some time outside of time. Talia had no idea where they were going. Come to think of it, she had no idea where they were. Everything looked familiar, but just slightly off. The capped sewer pipes painted to look like mushrooms? She'd always liked the whimsy of those. Today they looked like actual mushrooms sprouting against the buildings. The concert notices on the phone poles advertised local bands she'd never seen. And the telephone poles? She looked up. Not wires. Vines. What the? Squirrels raced overhead as usual, but they were not wires. And all the pigeons looked clean. No gnarled, string-clubbed feet. Just sleek, bright plumage winking in the sun? When did sunrise happen? Was she tripping? The woman stopped, placed a hand on Talia's arm. Stop worrying. I'll get you back on time. 3 doors down, the woman stopped again. One of the charms dangling from her staff was a key. She used it to unlock a glass door. The beads covering the door rattled as they entered. The shop smelled of roses, heliotrope, frankincense, burned down candles, cherry tobacco. Wooden shelves rose from a red-tiled floor stuffed with books, decaying hardbacks, paperbacks, everything shelved together, and jars filled with shells, bones, dried herbs, sand, candles in jars, tapers in boxes. The remaining walls rioted with colored hangings heavy with small beads. Masks hung above them, blank eyes staring. An ancient brass cash register crouched on the end of a glass counter. There was a set of scales, a vase of roses, lilies, a smaller vase of sweet peas set before a painted statue of a woman crowned with stars. Then she saw him, a man sitting in the corner. Black hair with 2 white streaks down either side like a badger's pelt. His nose was long. He smoked a pipe. Ah, the cherry tobacco. Found one? Yes. Something inside Talia went perfectly still. Her breathing slowed. Her thoughts became like crystal. She'd been training for this her whole life, but never quite thought it would be real. Never thought this place was possible, despite the stories Grandma told her before bed. The woman turned to her again. This is a place for you if you want it, but you have to want it. This is a place for you and a time, a place of study and learning, a place to grind the bones together with the sand, a place to blend the incense and the herbs, a place to question, and a place to not question. The man grunted, struck a match, put flame to his pipe again. His lips worked around the stem, drawing air through the pungent blend. Smoke rose. It felt comforting, like home. This place is yours in 7 years, but first you have to earn it. Talia closed her eyes, remembered last night's visions, and this morning's, and the visions she'd been having since her grandma died when she was 7. Grandma had placed her hand on Talia's head. It felt pretty heavy for such a little pile of sticks. You get the sight now, child, the legacy. I hope it's good to you. Something had tingled at the very top of her skull. 3 hours later, Grandma was dead. The funeral was weird. People showed up that Talia had never seen before and shook her little hand. She was wearing shoes too big as usual. Gotta have room to grow, her daddy said. She opened her eyes again. Why me? The woman laughed, sharp. The man just shook his head. Wrong question. Talia took another breath, listened, reached for the tendrils she could feel just gathering. There. She grabbed them and they told her what she needed. The right question was, how? A smile broke through the woman's face. The man stood, wrenched open a stuck drawer, rattled around, handed her a tarnished key. He cleared his throat. You come here every day but Sunday, now you know the way. I teach the how. The why take care of itself. Her fingers closed around the metal. She could feel the small teeth digging into her palm. Okay. You've got to say the words, child. Speak the power. Talia looked from her to him. They were so old, but their faces barely had any lines. Like Grandma until the cancer ate her soul away. She looked around at the hangings and the jars, the books, the scales on the counter, the red-tiled floor. I will. And was back on her bruised knees in front of the gingko tree in the patch of grass. The sun was brightening the sky. The poppies and oxalis were starting to unfurl. Her right hand was clutched around a key. She pushed up from the concrete, knees complaining. Shit, that hurts. Talia pushed her locks away from her face, took a breath of the May air, stuck the key in her pocket. Time for breakfast. Time to get to work.